I thought paradise was real. I trusted him. His voice promised peace, a sanctuary from pain. But now, kneeling in the mud with trembling hands, watching mothers cradle silent children, the bitter taste of poison still lingering in the air, I realized the truth. Paradise was a lie. Reverend Wade wasn't our savior. He was our executioner. Over 900 lives stolen, manipulated by one man's twisted dream. How did devotion become death? How did faith blind us to our own destruction? My name is Sarah Holloway, and this is the chilling story of how hope became horror in the jungle commune tragedy. Welcome to the Skillful Art of Manipulation audiobook. If you haven't already, we invite you to follow us on your favorite podcast platform so you never miss a story. Today, we're honored to bring you the jungle commune tragedy. Get ready to immerse yourself in a powerful mind-blowing manipulation thriller that will leave you on the edge of your seat. Because here, our mission is to keep you coming back for more. So without further ado, let's dive into this thrilling narrative together. Chapter 1, Paradise Lost. The first thing I remember about Reverend Elias Wade was his voice. A soft, velvety tenor that seemed to wrap around you, comfort you, promise you everything you'd ever dreamed of. It was a voice that found the cracks in your armor, slipping past every defense you didn't even know you had. When I first heard him speak at that small church in San Francisco, it felt like he had reached directly into my chest and grabbed hold of something fragile and long neglected. That voice made me feel seen for the first time in my life. It was warmth, it was shelter, it was belonging. I guess that's why I believed him. I guess that's why we all did. My name is Sarah Holloway, and by November 1978, I had been following Reverend Wade for nearly 3 years. By then, devotion had become second nature to me, breathing, sleeping, praying, believing. It wasn't just me. 900 other souls had found their way into the arms of Reverend Wade's promises. Each of us was chasing something we'd lost, or maybe something we'd never found in the first place. Reverend Wade knew this better than anyone. He could spot emptiness a mile away, even in a crowded room. He could smell loneliness the way other people smelled perfume or coffee. It all began with weekly sermons at our modest community center in California. Reverend Wade had this incredible ability to take even the simplest Bible verse and spin it into a grand, life-changing revelation. His sermons were theatrical, poetic yet grounded, gentle yet forceful. I still recall vividly how he would stand at the pulpit, arms spread wide, eyes blazing with passionate conviction. His charisma was magnetic. People would weep openly at the sound of his voice, surrendering themselves to his vision without hesitation. You don't need to suffer in silence, he would preach. The world out there is lost, full of greed, hatred, and selfishness. But together, my friends, we can build a new Eden. We can create paradise right here on Earth. His message resonated deeply within me. I was 25, aimless, and recently divorced, drifting in and out of meaningless jobs, hollow friendships, and relationships that ended before they really began. I was desperate for purpose, desperate to belong. Reverend Wade seemed to see right through my facade. After the service one night, he took my hands in his and said softly, "Sarah, I see your heart. You belong here." From that moment on, I never questioned him. When Reverend Wade first mentioned the commune, the excitement swept through our community like wildfire. He described an untouched paradise in Guyana, a jungle sanctuary, safe from corrupt politics, racial hatred, and war. A place where we could live in harmony, where children could grow up safe, and the elderly would spend their twilight years in peace. "The world will call us radicals," Wade declared, "but we know better. God himself has chosen this place for us. It's time to go home." Preparation for the move became our entire existence. We sold homes, drained savings, cut ties with skeptical friends and family. Reverend Wade assured us that this sacrifice was necessary to purify our souls from the poison of modern society. Each new sacrifice bound us tighter to his vision. With every passing day, our dependence on him grew. And I was more devoted than most. I became his personal assistant, his trusted confidant. The pride I felt was overwhelming. He had chosen me, elevated me above others, making my devotion absolute. Yet despite my dedication, small things nagged at me, tiny doubts I shoved aside. A few members suddenly left, disappearing without explanation. Friends who raised questions about Reverend Wade's authority were publicly shamed, forced to repent their sins in front of the entire congregation. But I justified it all. After all, weren't we trying to build perfection? Didn't perfection require discipline? The day we finally arrived in Guyana, stepping from a rickety plane onto the humid soil, my heart surged with hope. Jungle birds called out from towering trees. Lush greenery stretched endlessly in every direction, the air heavy with moisture and promise. Reverend Wade stood before us, dressed in his white suit, smiling with a brilliance that burned away all my lingering concerns. "Welcome to paradise," he said, his voice trembling with emotion. "Welcome to your new beginning." In those early days, our jungle commune, named Eden's Gate, felt like a dream. We worked tirelessly to clear land, build homes, and plant crops. Every sunset, we gathered around bonfires, singing hymns beneath brilliant star-strewn skies. Reverend Wade preached messages of unity, sacrifice, and love that left us weeping with joy. The sheer camaraderie and shared purpose made any hardship bearable. But as weeks turned into months, paradise began to change subtly. Reverend Wade's sermons grew darker, more insistent. His preaching shifted from hope and harmony to warnings of betrayal and infiltration. He began referring ominously to enemies trying to sabotage our commune. He tightened security, assigning guards armed with rifles to patrol the perimeter. Late-night meetings between Reverend Wade and his inner circle became common, their whispers charged with tension and secrecy. I noticed the shift, of course, but I convinced myself it was necessary. "Paradise needs protection," Reverend Wade would tell me privately. "People will try to destroy what we've built, Sarah. You must trust me now more than ever." And I did. I swallowed the growing unease in my chest, nodding earnestly, loyal until it hurt. I trusted him completely, even as my dreams began to darken, even as the paradise I'd envisioned started to show its hidden thorns. It was a cool night in November when the doubts finally blossomed fully inside me. Reverend Wade called a late-night assembly, urgent, unplanned. Hundreds of us gathered anxiously in the pavilion, eyes wide, murmuring questions. Wade stood before us, his face solemn, eyes hollowed by exhaustion and suspicion. "We've been betrayed," he said gravely, the silence around him deepening until it felt suffocating. "There are snakes among us, my friends. Enemies who wish us harm, who wish to destroy Eden's Gate." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Wade raised his hand, commanding silence effortlessly. "But fear not. God has spoken to me. I will protect you." That night, as he scanned the crowd, his gaze fell on mine, hard, penetrating, unsettling. A chill ran down my spine, my heart racing. He nodded slightly, as if silently confirming something dark between us. My hands trembled. It felt as though I'd been marked, chosen once more, but this time for something I couldn't yet comprehend. As we dispersed, the darkness around me felt different, heavier, oppressive. I walked back to my small wooden shack alone, my breath uneven, panic fluttering within my chest. The jungle, once my Eden, suddenly seemed alive with whispers, secrets slithering between leaves, shadows shifting ominously in the moonlight. That night I lay awake for hours, haunted by the Reverend's words, by the slow but unstoppable realization that paradise was slipping away, swallowed by a darkness I'd willingly ignored. I could never have guessed, as dawn finally arrived, pale and reluctant through the heavy jungle mist, just how deep that darkness would become, or how far I would go. How far we all would go to escape it. Chapter 2: The Commune's Secret. As the weeks crawled slowly by in Eden's Gate, the dense Guyanese jungle began to lose its vibrant charm. The tropical greenery, once breathtaking and full of promise, now felt suffocating, closing in around us like a fortress. The very trees seemed to hold secrets, their shadows growing longer and darker with each passing day. I remember vividly the feeling of dread that settled into my chest, a gnawing, persistent anxiety I tried desperately to suppress. I convinced myself that my doubts were ungrateful, disloyal, even sinful. But doubt had taken root deep inside me, and it refused to die. Every day began the same. Reverend Wade woke us at sunrise through loudspeakers strategically placed around the commune, his voice echoing eerily through the heavy morning mist. We gathered in silence, exhausted, our faces pale and drawn from weeks of relentless labor. His sermons were no longer comforting. They were increasingly ominous, heavy with foreboding warnings of unseen dangers. He spoke frequently of outsiders and traitors, vague threats that left us perpetually unsettled. Obedience, Wade insisted, was our only salvation. It wasn't long before the weight of Reverend Wade's paranoia began reshaping our lives in subtle, yet unmistakable ways. Security tightened dramatically around the commune, transforming what had been a place of hope into a guarded compound. Barbed wire fences sprung up seemingly overnight. Guards patrolled the perimeters armed with rifles, eyes cold and distrustful, even toward fellow commune members. Freedom, once our promise, became elusive. No one was permitted to leave the grounds without express permission, permission Wade rarely granted. I remember one incident vividly. A small group, 3 young men and a woman named Laura, whom I'd grown close to, tried to slip away quietly one evening. They didn't intend harm, they simply longed for home. Reverend Wade's guards intercepted them near the jungle's edge, dragging them back, their faces bruised and bodies battered. Wade called an assembly immediately, and we watched horrified as he humiliated them publicly, branding them traitors, weak, and undeserving of paradise. Forced confessions came next, words choked out through tears, trembling bodies broken by guilt and shame. As I stood there watching Laura sob uncontrollably, begging forgiveness she didn't need, my chest tightened painfully. The shadows around Reverend Wade had deepened. What had started as passion and conviction had curdled into something darker, colder. Even then, I still clung to denial. I convinced myself that discipline was necessary. We were creating a new world. Purity required strength. Wade's words echoed within me, drowning out my own intuition. Soon after, whispers filled the commune. Small groups gathered secretly after dark, exchanging stories of increasing severity. There were rumors of Reverend Wade's inner circle. Men and women who worshipped him not merely as a leader, but as something far more divine, more dangerous. Rumors of late-night rituals, bizarre ceremonies of allegiance, and punishments for those who questioned Wade's authority. Fear became the fabric of our daily lives, woven so seamlessly into the routine we barely noticed its suffocating grip. One evening, desperate for answers, I crept silently through the humid darkness toward Wade's quarters. A large wooden house set apart from the rest of the commune, shrouded by dense foliage. My heart pounded violently, adrenaline surging through my veins. I'd convinced myself I was merely worried for him, worried about the strain leadership had placed on him. The lie was thin, fragile. I knew deep down I was driven by dread, the desperate need to know what truths lay hidden behind his polished facade. As I crouched beneath the open window, I heard Wade speaking to his closest followers. His voice was low, angry, intense, completely unlike the soft, reassuring tone he used publicly. "We must remain vigilant," he growled. "Enemies surround us. I can feel their eyes, watching our every move. But I will not let them win. We'll fight if we must, die if we must. But we won't surrender our Eden." "Reverend," a female voice spoke cautiously, "perhaps we're overreacting." Wade cut her off sharply. "Overreacting? Would you question God's word? Would you betray me like the others? Doubt is the enemy here. Doubt is what will destroy us." My stomach lurched violently. Reverend Wade's tone was so filled with venom, his paranoia so acute, that I felt physically ill. Suddenly, the image I'd carefully nurtured, the kind, gentle man who had once comforted my deepest insecurities, shattered violently, leaving nothing but cold fear in its wake. The conversation shifted abruptly, Wade whispering instructions too soft for me to clearly discern. I strained my ears, heart hammering in my chest, but could make out only fragments, words like preparations, emergency plan, final sacrifice. Those words filled me with a dread deeper than anything I'd ever known. It took every ounce of strength to suppress a panicked gasp. I fled quickly, my legs shaky beneath me, heart pounding wildly, racing back to the fragile security of my shack. Sleeplessness haunted me from then on. I tossed and turned restlessly, replaying Wade's chilling words over and over. I felt trapped, not just physically, but emotionally and psychologically. Loyalty had become chains binding me to Reverend Wade's increasingly unstable mind. Days blurred into a feverish cycle of anxiety. Conversations became muted, filled with unspoken fears and coded glances. Trust among commune members began to fracture. We all felt watched, scrutinized, judged. A sinister tension thickened around us, palpable, oppressive. Whispers of paranoia bloomed openly into distrust, with neighbors and friends suspecting each other of betrayal. One evening, Laura came to my shack, eyes wild with fear. She closed the door hastily, voice barely a whisper. "Sarah, something terrible is coming. People are saying Reverend Wade is planning something irreversible." I stared at her helplessly, unable to form a comforting response. Her trembling fingers clutched mine desperately. "We have to escape," she breathed urgently. "Tonight, before it's too late." My chest tightened with panic. "Laura, we can't just leave," I whispered desperately. "The guards." "We have no choice," she cut me off sharply. "If we stay, we'll die here." Before I could reply, a sudden pounding erupted at the door, brutal and insistent. Laura's eyes widened in terror. "Sarah Holloway," came the sharp voice outside. Reverend Wade wishes to see you. Immediately. I froze. Laura's grip loosened, her face pale with fear. I opened the door slowly, heart racing. 2 guards stood grimly outside, their faces devoid of emotion. You'll come now, one ordered. As they led me through the dark jungle toward Reverend Wade's quarters, my mind spun violently. Laura's desperate plea echoed hauntingly. If we stay, we'll die here. As the commune faded into shadows behind me, Reverend Wade's home loomed ahead, brightly lit yet somehow impossibly dark. A place filled with secrets I was terrified to uncover. My chest ached, breath short and ragged. Paradise had crumbled. What remained was a nightmare I couldn't wake from. A secret that, once known, could never be forgotten. Chapter 3: Blind Loyalty. The wooden steps creaked beneath my feet as I climbed toward Reverend Wade's quarters, each slow, deliberate step echoing in my ears like a death knell. Fear churned in my stomach, bitter and unrelenting. Beside me, the guards moved silently, their presence a heavy reminder that freedom was now merely an illusion. The man I'd once trusted implicitly, whose voice had soothed away my doubts, now filled me with dread. Yet even in my fear, something inside me still clung desperately to loyalty, to denial. Surely, I thought weakly, there's an explanation for all of this. The door swung open slowly, revealing Reverend Wade seated calmly behind a sturdy wooden desk. A single oil lamp illuminated his face, casting sinister shadows across his sharp features. He looked up, eyes glinting strangely in the dim light, his smile gentle but unsettling. "Sarah," he spoke softly, his voice disturbingly calm, "please come sit." My legs trembled as I moved toward him, lowering myself cautiously onto the chair across the desk. The guards stepped outside silently, closing the door behind them, leaving us alone. My heart pounded wildly. Reverend Wade studied me quietly, the silence between us stretching painfully. Finally, he leaned forward, fingertips pressed thoughtfully together. "You seem troubled, Sarah," he murmured. "I see doubt in your eyes. Tell me, what weighs so heavily on your heart?" His voice was warm, comforting, the same velvet timbre that had drawn me to him years before. But now it felt dangerous, manipulative. Still, the power he held over me lingered, pulling words reluctantly from my lips. I'm afraid," I confessed softly, unable to meet his gaze. "People are frightened. The guards, the punishments, the secrecy. I don't understand what's happening here." He exhaled deeply, a disappointed sigh, as though saddened by my perceived weakness. Leaning closer, his eyes locked onto mine, intense and unyielding. "Sarah, building paradise is painful," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Fear is a test, a necessary sacrifice. The faithful must endure hardship to purify their souls. Doubt is poison, my dear. It destroys from within. You must trust me. Do you trust me?" His gaze penetrated deeply, breaking through my defenses effortlessly. My throat tightened, a swell of emotions crashing over me. Fear, confusion, lingering devotion. Despite every instinct screaming at me to run, his control over me was absolute. My voice trembled as I replied, softly yet sincerely, "Yes, Reverend. Of course, I trust you." His face softened immediately, a pleased smile spreading across his lips. "Good, Sarah. You've always been special, closer to me than the others. You see clearly where they fail." A strange pride surged within me at his words, mingled shamefully with lingering anxiety. He reached out, gently taking my hand, his touch firm, reassuring and terrifyingly authoritative. "Now listen closely. Tonight's events, your fears, they must remain between us. We must present unity, Sarah. Weakness invites enemies." I nodded slowly, hypnotically, every part of me desperate to please him despite my apprehension. His smile widened slightly, eyes darkening with satisfaction. "Good. Loyalty rewards itself," he murmured cryptically, squeezing my hand gently before releasing it. "Now go rest. Tomorrow is another day in Eden." Dismissed, I stumbled outside into the oppressive jungle night. My thoughts spun chaotically, doubts and loyalties clashing violently inside me. I was trapped in Reverend Wade's carefully woven web, unable to discern truth from deception, safety from danger. Days turned into weeks, and life in Eden's Gate grew harsher. Reverend Wade's sermons became relentless, delivered with fiery intensity and severe discipline. His paranoia seeped through every sermon, infecting our hearts with fear and suspicion. The lines between faith and fanaticism blurred completely. Followers, once peaceful and hopeful, now anxiously watched each other, suspicious of betrayal. Friendships fractured under the strain of mistrust. Each whispered conversation carried the weight of potential treason. One night, Reverend Wade held a disturbing midnight ceremony. We gathered silently beneath torchlight, anxiety heavy in the humid air. Wade stood before us, dressed in white robes stained crimson at the sleeves, symbols of sacrifice. His eyes burned with fanatical zeal. "My children," his voice rang powerfully, echoing through the oppressive jungle. "Sacrifice is the path to salvation. Only through pain, through absolute devotion can we achieve purity." He raised his hands dramatically, eyes flashing wildly. "Who among you is willing to prove your loyalty?" A hush fell instantly. Panic surged through me. Several stepped forward hesitantly, visibly shaking yet desperate for his approval. Wade smiled triumphantly, selecting a young man named Jacob, barely 19, who stood trembling before him. "Jacob," Wade said softly, dangerously, "to prove your devotion you must willingly suffer as Christ suffered. Show your brethren the strength of your faith." Jacob nodded fearfully, eyes brimming with tears. My heart twisted violently as Wade handed him a whip. Slowly, Jacob lifted his shirt, exposing his bare back. Reverend Wade nodded solemnly. "Begin." We watched in silent horror as Jacob raised the whip and brought it crashing down onto his own back, flesh tearing instantly, blood trickling darkly beneath torchlight. With each agonizing strike, Reverend Wade nodded approvingly, eyes gleaming. My stomach churned violently. Around me, whispers began, fearful, horrified, yet undeniably enthralled. "Enough," Wade finally commanded, stepping forward to gently touch Jacob's shoulder, guiding him away. Jacob staggered weakly, collapsing into waiting arms, sobbing uncontrollably. Wade turned sharply toward us, eyes fierce. "Behold true devotion. Only through pain will we be saved. Doubt and weakness will destroy you." That night, lying sleeplessly in bed, Jacob's anguished screams echoed hauntingly in my mind. The paradise Wade promised had become a nightmare. Yet even then, loyalty bound me to him. His voice, his power, his control, I felt helplessly chained. Soon after, Laura secretly approached again, eyes desperate and haunted. "We have to escape now, Sarah. This is madness. We'll die here if we stay." I can't," I whispered helplessly, ashamed of my weakness. "He needs me." Laura stared, devastated. "He's poisoning you. He's poisoning us all." Before I could reply, footsteps approached rapidly. Guards burst inside, dragging Laura violently away, ignoring her terrified screams. Reverend Wade appeared behind them, eyes cold, accusing. "Sarah, remember loyalty," he whispered harshly, watching my reaction closely. I stood frozen, numb with horror and shame, silent as Laura's desperate cries faded into the jungle darkness. Later, Wade called another assembly. Laura stood bruised and trembling before us, publicly shamed as a traitor, her betrayal announced bitterly. Wade turned, pointing directly at me, eyes darkly intense. "Sarah understands loyalty. Sarah would never betray Eden." Hundreds turned toward me, their gazes judgmental, expectant. My heart shattered silently as I nodded mechanically, agreeing helplessly, my voice barely audible. "Yes, I understand loyalty." As Laura's anguished eyes met mine, her expression filled with betrayal and sorrow, my heart fractured irreparably. Reverend Wade's grip tightened mercilessly around me, suffocating, inescapable. That night, as I lay alone in bed, silent tears streaming down my face, realization crashed down violently. Loyalty had become my prison, devotion had become my chain. I was as trapped as Laura, as Jacob, as everyone else. Reverend Wade's manipulation was absolute, ruthless, and unbreakable. And deep down, in the most hidden, broken part of my soul, I knew with painful clarity that the worst was yet to come. Chapter 4. Escalating Paranoia. Sleep became a fleeting, torturous thing, slipping away from me each night like sand between my fingers. Lying in the suffocating darkness, listening to the jungle's oppressive chorus, the endless hum of insects, cries of nocturnal creatures, and occasional sobs from neighboring shacks, I wrestled desperately with guilt, shame, and dread. Laura's haunted, accusing eyes visited me every time I closed mine, a relentless torment etched deeply into my conscience. But deeper still lay a more sinister torment. The realization that my blind devotion had helped build the very prison that now held us all captive. The Commune had fully transformed from utopia into nightmare. Reverend Wade's paranoia spread through Eden's gate like a fever, infecting every conversation, every glance, every whispered word. Guards multiplied, ever-present shadows gripping their rifles tightly, eyes scanning relentlessly for imagined threats. Trust had become an extinct commodity, suspicion replacing compassion and friendship. Reverend Wade himself had become distant, isolating himself within his quarters, guarded night and day, emerging only to deliver increasingly fanatical sermons that left us trembling. One humid afternoon, Wade summoned us urgently. Fear gripped me instantly as we assembled beneath the blazing tropical sun, sweat dripping down anxious faces. Wade emerged from his quarters, his presence imposing, yet disturbingly erratic. Dark circles rimmed his eyes, deep lines of strain cutting across his features. His once charismatic, reassuring aura had twisted into something darker, unstable. "My children," he shouted, voice trembling with urgency. "Our enemies grow closer every day. Their eyes watch us constantly, plotting destruction. We must remain vigilant. There is no room for doubt or mercy. Anyone who betrays us must be cleansed." His gaze drifted slowly, deliberately across the crowd, eyes sharp, accusatory. Murmurs rippled nervously among us, tension thickening oppressively. Suddenly, he thrust an accusing finger outward, singling out Thomas, a gentle man who had joined us with his wife and 2 young daughters. "Him! That man! He conspires against us," Wade roared, eyes blazing fanatically. The crowd parted instantly, isolating Thomas in terrified silence. Thomas stared wide-eyed, shaking his head frantically. "No! Reverend, I swear, I've done nothing wrong." Wade ignored his pleas. "Guards! Bring him forward." The guards seized Thomas roughly, dragging him struggling and pleading to stand helplessly before Wade. His wife sobbed hysterically, clutching their daughters close. Wade leaned close, face mere inches from Thomas's terrified expression. "You would betray paradise, betray me?" Wade hissed dangerously. "Confess your treachery now and beg forgiveness." Thomas, frantic with fear, broke down into desperate, choking sobs. "Please, Reverend. I swear I'm innocent. I'm loyal." Wade paused, a cruel smile spreading slowly across his lips. "Loyalty must be proven." He nodded sharply to the guards, who dragged Thomas violently toward a hastily built cage at the edge of the compound. Horrified, we watched silently as they locked him inside, exposed beneath the scorching sun, isolated and vulnerable. "No food, no water," Wade commanded coldly. "He must suffer until God judges his soul pure." The horror of that moment etched itself deeply into my mind. Thomas's anguished cries echoed in my ears, a haunting testament to Wade's escalating cruelty. His wife collapsed to the ground, weeping uncontrollably, begging for mercy that never came. That night, under cover of darkness, guilt drove me quietly to Thomas's cage. Kneeling beside it, my heart broke to see him curled weakly against metal bars, barely conscious. "Thomas," I whispered urgently, sliding a canteen through the bars. "Drink quickly." His eyes opened painfully, gratitude flooding them as he drank desperately. "Sarah," he whispered weakly, "you must run from here." Wade's lost himself completely. Footsteps approached sharply, and I leaped back just as a rifle barrel pressed harshly against my spine. A guard's voice growled, menacingly cold. "Come with me." I was dragged roughly to Wade's quarters once more, thrust violently inside. Reverend Wade stood waiting calmly, eyes piercingly intense. "You disappoint me again, Sarah," he said softly, dangerously. "Please, Reverend," I stammered, trembling violently. "Thomas is innocent." "Innocent?" Wade spat bitterly, stepping closer, his eyes wild. "No one is innocent. Betrayal lurks everywhere. Even within you, it seems." My voice quivered desperately. "I only wanted—" "You wanted?" Wade interrupted harshly. "Your desires, Sarah, threaten everything we've built. Have you forgotten loyalty?" Shame burned fiercely inside me. Despite my fear, my weakness, I found myself desperately pleading for his forgiveness, needing his approval like an addict craving relief. "I'm sorry, Reverend," I whispered brokenly. "I beg forgiveness." He stared down, expression softening slightly, dangerously manipulative. His voice lowered gently. "Prove yourself again, Sarah. Prove your devotion beyond doubt." He leaned closer, his voice hypnotically persuasive. "Tell me who conspires with Thomas. Prove your faith to me." A moment of terrified hesitation gripped me. The silence stretched painfully between us until, desperate to please him, I whispered shamefully, Laura wanted escape." His eyes glittered triumphantly. "Excellent, Sarah." The next morning, Wade summoned everyone once more. Thomas was released, barely alive, and Laura dragged forward, eyes wide with betrayal. Wade's voice thundered with fanatical righteousness. Laura plotted escape, betrayal. Sarah bravely revealed this poison among us. Loyalty alone protects paradise. My heart shattered seeing Laura's devastated, accusing stare. I had sacrificed her to save myself, betrayed friendship for Wade's twisted approval. Guilt consumed me entirely, yet Wade's twisted praise still filled me with sickening pride, deepening my shame. As paranoia grew unchecked, Eden's Gate unraveled chaotically. Guards seized members randomly, interrogating brutally for imagined plots. Wade's sermons grew increasingly deranged, visions of persecution tormenting him visibly. Nightly, screams pierced darkness, sounds of torture inflicted upon supposed traitors, real or imagined. Fear became omnipresent, a choking fog wrapping itself around us. Friends vanished mysteriously overnight. Families fractured under suspicion, parents afraid of their children, spouses distrusting each other. Wade encouraged constant vigilance, rewarding betrayal, crushing mercy. Eden's Gate became a suffocating nightmare of distrust and suffering. Still, I remained trapped by Wade's psychological chains, my own actions feeding deeper self-loathing. His manipulation had stripped away my identity entirely, leaving only hollow desperation for his approval. I had become complicit in his madness, a willing accomplice, prisoner of my own blind loyalty. Yet deep inside, buried beneath layers of fear, shame, and manipulation, a single spark ignited, a desperate desire for freedom, redemption, escape. Each act of cruelty witnessed, each betrayal committed, fanned that fragile spark, strengthening its resolve until it burned fiercely. But as Wade's paranoia escalated violently, time was slipping away. I knew with chilling certainty that unless I acted soon, Reverend Wade's final, terrifying vision would consume us all completely. The question haunting me now was simple yet terrifying. Did I have the strength left within me to break free? Or was it already too late? Chapter 5. The Point of No Return. Days blurred relentlessly together, one indistinguishable from the next, each sunrise carrying the weight of dread, each sunset marking another day survived but never truly lived. Eden's Gate had descended fully into a living nightmare. Reverend Wade's paranoia escalated into madness, reshaping our lives into a twisted prison of suspicion and terror. Guards patrolled relentlessly, weapons always visible, eyes glaring accusingly at anyone whose gaze lingered too long or too curiously. Trust was utterly extinct, replaced by a suffocating fog of fear and betrayal. Even so, I still clung desperately to fragments of hope, buried deep within my battered spirit, silently praying for redemption, desperately wishing someone stronger, braver, would break us free. It was early November when everything finally fractured beyond repair. Reverend Wade summoned us to another midnight assembly, torches casting flickering shadows upon hundreds of faces, exhausted, anxious, hollow-eyed people whose spirits had nearly shattered completely. Wade emerged solemnly, flanked closely by guards, his appearance more haggard and manic than ever before. His eyes, sunken and dark, gleamed with unsettling intensity. "My beloved children," he began, voice trembling eerily. "Tonight, I must share a disturbing revelation. Our enemies have penetrated deeply within Eden's Gate. Traitors hide among us, plotting betrayal, seeking our destruction. God has spoken clearly. We must purge ourselves of this darkness. Only then can paradise truly flourish." His words landed like blows, eliciting fearful murmurs. Wade scanned the crowd methodically, his eyes settling finally on Daniel Cooper, a mild-mannered teacher who had dedicated his life to educating our commune's children. "Daniel," Wade pronounced sharply. "Step forward." Daniel obeyed nervously, visibly trembling, confusion etched into his gentle face. Wade approached him slowly, eyes glittering dangerously. "You've betrayed us, Daniel," Wade accused coldly. "Confess your sins." Daniel shook his head desperately. "Reverend, please, I'm innocent." "Lies!" Wade thundered, grabbing Daniel's collar roughly. "God sees your betrayal clearly. Confess now." Daniel stared helplessly, tears streaming silently down his cheeks. "I swear, Reverend, I've done nothing wrong." Wade's face twisted furiously. "God demands purity through pain." "Guards!" Two guards moved swiftly, forcing Daniel to his knees. The crowd watched in paralyzed horror as Wade reached for a thin, cruel whip, an instrument of discipline now common among us. Without hesitation, he struck Daniel viciously across the back, the crack echoing sharply. Daniel screamed, collapsing forward, shaking uncontrollably. "Confess!" Wade demanded mercilessly, striking again. Each cruel strike tore at my soul. My heart hammered painfully, breath tight in my chest, overwhelmed by guilt and despair. Wade whipped Daniel repeatedly, methodically, eyes blazing fanatically, indifferent to Daniel's broken pleas for mercy. Finally, Daniel collapsed unconscious, bleeding and broken. Wade stopped abruptly, breathing heavily. "Let this be a lesson. Wade roared, his voice shaking with manic fervor. Betrayal will be cleansed. No mercy will be given. He turned sharply toward me, eyes narrowing dangerously. My stomach lurched violently, dread flooding every nerve. "Sarah," he called sharply, voice dangerously soft. "Come forward." Trembling violently, I stepped forward slowly, each step heavier than the last. Wade's gaze pierced deeply, assessing me coldly. "You have wavered, Sarah," he accused softly, stepping closer. "I see doubt poisoning your spirit. Tonight, you must prove your loyalty beyond all doubt." His voice dropped to a whisper, intimate and sinister. "Administer the final punishment." My heart stopped, panic crashing violently inside me. He held out the whip slowly, eyes locked unflinchingly onto mine. "Prove yourself, Sarah. Or join him in punishment." My breath caught sharply. Daniel lay motionless, barely breathing. Tears blurred my vision painfully. My hands shook uncontrollably, heart torn agonizingly between fear and compassion, shame and desperation. "Sarah," Wade hissed impatiently, eyes dangerously dark. "Do it now." Something inside me broke, shattered completely. Hands trembling, I took the whip, approaching Daniel's broken form. Wade's gaze bore relentlessly into me, expectant, triumphant. My chest tightened painfully, tears sliding silently down my face as I raised the whip hesitantly. But as I prepared to strike, Daniel's eyes fluttered open weakly, meeting mine painfully. "Sarah," he whispered brokenly. "Please don't." His voice shattered the remaining fragments of my resolve. Anguish overwhelmed me, the whip slipping weakly from my hands. I can't," I choked out desperately. "I won't," gasps echoed sharply through the crowd. Wade's eyes flashed furiously, his voice trembling with barely restrained rage. "Sarah Holloway," he hissed venomously. "You choose betrayal? I choose mercy," I shouted defiantly, heart racing violently. "This isn't paradise, it's madness." Silence stretched painfully. Wade stared coldly, visibly trembling with fury. He finally spoke, dangerously calm. "Very well. Guards, seize her." Hands grabbed roughly, dragging me violently away. As I was thrown into a crude wooden cell, my world collapsed around me. Painfully alone, I huddled in darkness, despairing. But within that suffocating darkness, a spark ignited. A fierce determination never felt before, fueled by anger, grief, and newfound clarity. I had finally reached the breaking point. No longer would Reverend Wade control my soul, my actions, my heart. His power over me shattered completely. Now clarity burned brightly within me, a desperate, fierce resolve, escape, freedom, and redemption. Days passed torturously in confinement, hungry and exhausted. Each moment alone strengthened my resolve. Laura was imprisoned nearby, our whispered conversations at night fueling courage, solidifying a fragile alliance forged from mutual suffering. Together, we plotted quietly, waiting patiently for the moment our guard's vigilance faltered. That opportunity arrived unexpectedly one night. A single guard, fatigued and complacent, fell asleep momentarily outside our cells. Heart pounding furiously, I quietly removed a hidden metal pin from beneath my thin mattress, slowly, meticulously unlocking my cell door. The soft click felt like salvation. Laura watched silently, hopeful yet terrified. Moving soundlessly, I crept forward, seizing the guard's discarded rifle. His startled eyes opened sharply, registering shock before my desperate strike knocked him unconscious. Freeing Laura swiftly, we embraced briefly, tears flooding our eyes. "We must run," she whispered urgently. "Now!" We fled silently into darkness, hearts hammering wildly. Each shadow, each sound heightened our terror. The jungle swallowed us eagerly, dense foliage tearing at our skin, insects buzzing relentlessly. Panic propelled us forward, blindly desperate for escape. But as we neared the jungle's edge, guards appeared suddenly, rifles raised menacingly. "Stop! Traitors!" Laura froze, eyes wide with despair. Heart pounding furiously, I stepped protectively in front of her, desperation surging violently within me. But before the guards could seize us, shouting erupted suddenly from within Eden's gate. Chaos, confusion, screaming. Turning sharply, we saw flames rising from Reverend Wade's quarters, the compound erupting violently into turmoil. In that instant, clarity crystallized fiercely within me. Reverend Wade's twisted vision was imploding. The tipping point had finally arrived. But freedom still lay perilously out of reach. As flames engulfed Eden's gate, and chaos consumed our captors, we ran desperately, blindly into darkness. Our hearts and spirits unified in a desperate plea for survival. Yet deep inside, I knew with haunting clarity, Eden's final reckoning had just begun. Chapter 6: The Night of Reckoning. The jungle swallowed us whole, darkness so thick it suffocated every gasp, every desperate sob, every trembling breath. We ran blindly, our bare feet slamming painfully into roots and stones hidden beneath layers of thick mud. Vines tore viciously at our arms and legs, leaving burning trails of blood and sweat in their wake. My lungs screamed, fire and panic surging relentlessly within me, yet fear drove me forward into the unknown, away from Reverend Wade's crumbling paradise, away from madness, punishment, and blind obedience. Laura stumbled, crying out sharply as she collapsed to the jungle floor. "Sarah, I can't!" she gasped desperately, tears streaking her mud-smeared face. "I can't go any farther." I knelt quickly beside her, heart racing violently, terror flooding every nerve. "We have to, Laura. They'll kill us if we stay. Please." Behind us, shouts and frantic footsteps echoed ominously, guards crashing recklessly through thick foliage, rifles cocked, their voices twisted with rage and desperation. Laura's eyes widened fearfully, determination slowly replacing exhaustion. She nodded shakily, gripping my arm tightly, hauling herself upright once more. Together, we pressed on, stumbling forward into uncertainty, propelled solely by sheer desperation and survival instinct. Finally, we collapsed, hidden beneath a dense cluster of twisted roots and hanging vines, hearts hammering violently, lungs gasping painfully. Around us, the jungle pressed suffocatingly close, insects buzzing incessantly, night creatures rustling ominously nearby. "Do you think they'll find us?" Laura whispered brokenly, eyes wide with fear. "I don't know," I whispered, voice trembling uncontrollably. "But we can't go back. We can't." Suddenly, the distant sound of Reverend Wade's voice echoed hauntingly through the jungle, distorted by rage and manic urgency, amplified by loudspeakers still active amidst the compound's chaos. The words chilled us to the bone. "My children," Wade roared desperately. "Paradise is under siege. The enemy surrounds us. The final moment is upon us. Return now, or lose your souls forever." His voice was frenzied, utterly devoid of the calm charisma he once commanded. It cracked with desperation, slipping into madness. The urgency terrified me, a chilling sense of foreboding settling heavily inside my chest. "What does he mean?" Laura whispered, panic tightening her voice. Before I could answer, gunshots erupted, sharp and explosive, echoing violently through the jungle. Screams followed immediately, shrill and terrified, cut short by further bursts of gunfire. We stared at each other, horrified realization dawning simultaneously. "Oh my God!" Laura choked out, her face deathly pale. "He's killing them." The horrifying truth crashed violently upon us. Reverend Wade was enacting his twisted vision fully: final punishment, ultimate control, absolute power through destruction. My stomach churned violently, guilt and despair threatening to consume me entirely. "We have to stop him," I whispered fiercely, fear mingled with desperate resolve. "We have to save them." Laura stared fearfully, trembling. "How?" "They'll kill us on sight." My heart hammered painfully, adrenaline surging relentlessly within me. "We owe it to them, to Daniel, Thomas, Jacob, to everyone we betrayed. I owe them." Laura nodded slowly, steeling herself bravely, eyes fierce despite overwhelming fear. "Together, Sarah." Returning quietly toward Eden's gate felt like descending willingly into hell itself. Flames lit the sky violently orange, smoke choking and thick, cries of agony and terror piercing the night relentlessly. Crouching hidden at the jungle's edge, horror gripped us as we witnessed the full magnitude of Wade's madness. Hundreds of followers stood trembling in rows, guards forcing them forward harshly, fearfully toward barrels filled with ominously purple liquid. Wade himself stood before them, eyes blazing with fanatical madness, a pistol clutched tightly. "My children, the time has come," Wade shouted, voice cracking frantically. "The enemy approaches. God demands our purity through sacrifice. Drink freely, embrace salvation." Followers sobbed uncontrollably, yet many stepped forward obediently, resignation etched tragically upon their faces. Children clung fearfully to their mothers, small hands trembling, eyes wide with innocent confusion. "No!" I screamed suddenly, desperation propelling me forward recklessly from hiding. "Don't drink it. It's poison. He's lying to you." Eyes turned sharply toward me, guards' rifles instantly raising menacingly. Wade's face contorted violently, rage igniting furiously. "Traitor! Guards, seize her!" Gunshots erupted sharply, bullets screaming past me. Laura followed quickly, shouting warnings desperately, drawing attention away. Chaos erupted violently, followers scattering hysterically, guards confused, firing blindly. Wade screamed furiously, attempting desperately to regain control. "Drink! Drink now! Embrace salvation!" Wade shrieked maniacally. But chaos had shattered Wade's fragile grip completely. Followers fled screaming, knocking over barrels, liquid spilling darkly onto earth already stained violently crimson. Guards struggled futilely, overwhelmed. I ran desperately toward Wade, driven solely by desperate fury and painful redemption. He turned sharply, pistol raising swiftly toward me, eyes blazing hatefully. "Sarah," he hissed venomously. "You destroyed paradise." I froze, heart hammering painfully. Wade's finger tightened slowly upon the trigger. In that instant, clarity crystallized powerfully. Fear vanished entirely, replaced by overwhelming peace. "Paradise never existed," I whispered, calmly meeting Wade's gaze. "Only madness." His finger squeezed, gunshot erupting sharply, yet pain never arrived. Eyes opening slowly, shock filled me seeing Wade collapse weakly, pistol slipping from limp fingers, blood blossoming violently upon his chest. Turning swiftly, I saw Laura clutching a guard's rifle, trembling violently, tears streaming silently. "It's over," she whispered brokenly, voice trembling. Around us, chaos subsided slowly, screams fading hauntingly, survivors sobbing softly. Eden's gate lay utterly shattered. Paradise reduced to smoldering ruin, trust destroyed, lives lost tragically. I knelt slowly beside Wade's broken form, his eyes flickering weakly open, pain filling them alongside fading fanaticism. "Why, Sarah?" he whispered faintly, voice thick with pain. "Why betray paradise?" I stared silently, sorrowfully. "Because paradise never demands suffering." His eyes closed slowly, breathing fading into silence. Rising shakily, I surveyed tragic devastation, heart fractured irreparably. Eden's gate had fallen completely, paradise revealed cruelly as deception, manipulation, blind obedience twisted into tragedy. Together, Laura and I gathered broken survivors quietly, offering comfort where possible, hearts aching profoundly. Dawn approached softly, illuminating Eden's destruction cruelly. Our paradise reduced tragically to ashes, dreams shattered entirely. Yet, amidst overwhelming sorrow, fragile hope stirred slowly within me. Wade's madness had failed ultimately, his power utterly destroyed. Freedom lay painfully earned, bitterly mourned yet fiercely precious. Turning slowly toward the jungle's edge, sunlight warmed gently, illuminating our battered faces clearly. Tears blurred vision softly, yet courage burned fiercely inside me. Paradise had ended tragically, but survival still lay possible. Freedom awaited painfully, redemption hard-earned, humanity reclaimed fiercely. Together, we stepped forward quietly into uncertain dawn, leaving Eden's shattered dreams behind forever. Chapter 7: Ashes of Innocence. Dawn broke softly over Eden's gate, bathing the smoldering remains of paradise in gentle, golden light, a cruel irony against the devastation left behind. Smoke still lingered heavily in the humid air, drifting upward like restless spirits, swirling silently around the charred ruins of our once-promised utopia. Standing amidst the tragic aftermath, my heart fractured beneath the weight of grief, guilt, and unbearable loss. The lush jungle, once vibrant with life and hope, had become a sorrowful witness to humanity's darkest depths. Survivors moved slowly, numbly through wreckage, their faces etched painfully with exhaustion and grief, eyes hollow from trauma that words could never fully express. Small groups gathered quietly, comforting each other softly, trying desperately to make sense of the unimaginable horrors they'd endured. Children clung fearfully to surviving parents, eyes wide with confusion and innocence forever stolen. The silence between us felt suffocating, heavy with shame and questions that could never be answered adequately. Laura stood beside me silently, her presence comforting yet filled with the unspoken knowledge of shared suffering. Her eyes glistened with tears, yet beneath that grief lay quiet strength forged from tragedy. Finally, she spoke softly, breaking gently through our mutual silence. "What do we do now, Sarah?" Her voice carried fragile hope, mingled painfully with uncertainty. I stared silently at the ruins before us. Homes reduced to ashes, gardens destroyed, dreams shattered violently. Reverend Wade's twisted vision had left nothing untouched, no soul unscarred. "We survive," I whispered finally, my voice trembling yet resolute. "We carry this tragedy with us, but we survive." Laura nodded slowly, her expression filled with quiet resolve. "Then let's help the others. Let's start healing. Together, We moved gently among survivors, offering comfort and solace, each gesture, each word, heavy with painful sincerity. The commune, once filled with blind obedience and oppressive silence, gradually began to breathe again softly. Words exchanged quietly, tears flowing freely, burdens shared openly for the first time. Survivors, once separated by fear and suspicion, now embraced compassionately, desperately reclaiming shattered humanity. As we worked, memories haunted relentlessly. Faces of those lost tragically etched deeply into our hearts. Daniel, Thomas, Jacob, so many others. Lives sacrificed cruelly beneath Reverend Wade's fanatical delusions. Guilt gripped fiercely, tormenting sleepless nights, yet slowly transformed painfully into unwavering resolve. Their lives would never be forgotten, their tragedy never repeated. Later, beneath gentle twilight, we gathered solemnly around a simple memorial hastily constructed from remnants of our shattered paradise. Wooden crosses erected humbly, each bearing names etched deeply with care and grief. Survivors shared quietly, voices trembling yet resolute, reclaiming their lost voices, rejecting silence forever. Stepping forward slowly, heart pounding painfully, I faced them, haunted by my role in their suffering, yet determined never again to surrender to fear, manipulation, or blind loyalty. "My friends," I began softly, voice trembling openly, "today we remember those lost tragically, victims not only of Reverend Wade's madness but of our collective silence, fear, and obedience. Paradise was promised, but we received only pain, suffering, and loss." Faces turned slowly toward me, expressions filled with grief, yet hope glimmering faintly within tearful eyes. Courage surged slowly, fragile yet fiercely determined. "I failed you," I confessed, voice choking painfully. "My silence enabled suffering. My obedience allowed tragedy. For that, I will never forgive myself. But together we survived, and we must honor their memory, not by remaining broken, but by reclaiming our lives fully." Laura stepped beside me softly, gently squeezing my hand reassuringly, voice firm yet compassionate. "Sarah is right," she spoke clearly, eyes meeting survivors compassionately. "We've endured horrors unimaginable, but we still stand broken but alive. Reverend Wade stole our innocence, our trust, but he can never take our strength or our future." Murmurs rippled gently, nodding slowly, survivors embracing softly, resolve igniting fiercely within battered spirits. Courage replaced fear, unity replaced isolation, humanity reclaimed fiercely from tragedy's ashes. Together, we knelt softly beside memorial crosses, grief flowing freely yet healing slowly beneath gentle twilight. Prayers whispered softly, songs hummed gently, memories shared openly, painful yet healing profoundly. For the first time, paradise became truly possible, not through blind devotion or obedience, but through shared grief, compassion, and humanity. Days later, authorities arrived finally, helicopters descending loudly, shocked disbelief etched painfully upon rescuers' faces. We were guided gently away from Eden's ruins, exhausted yet determined never to forget lessons painfully learned. News spread quickly, shockwaves rippling globally as Eden's Gate became tragically infamous, Reverend Wade's madness exposed starkly, lives tragically lost mourned deeply. Returning home was difficult, communities offering compassion, yet unable fully to comprehend horrors endured. Questions filled endlessly, reporters demanding explanations impossible to express adequately. Yet amidst overwhelming chaos, survivors clung fiercely together, offering comfort and understanding only we could share fully. Months passed slowly, healing gradual yet profound. Support groups formed softly, therapy sessions shared openly, nightmares slowly fading beneath gentle support. Eventually, I stood trembling yet resolute, publicly recounting Eden's Gate horrors, determined fiercely to prevent future tragedies. Warnings delivered passionately, manipulation and blind obedience exposed starkly as dangerous truths needing acknowledgement openly. Laura stood always beside me softly, friendship unbreakable, courage shared profoundly. Together we traveled, shared our experiences openly, warnings heeded carefully. Lessons painfully earned never forgotten. Eventually, nightmares softened gently beneath healing, guilt replaced slowly by compassionate forgiveness. Yet never absolving ourselves entirely, always remembering clearly dangers inherent within blind devotion, manipulation, obedience unquestioned. Years later, standing quietly beside Eden's Gate Memorial, permanent monuments erected solemnly, lives tragically lost honored permanently, I reflected silently upon painful journey endured fully, survival fiercely earned, humanity reclaimed compassionately. Kneeling softly, fingers brushing gently across names etched permanently, tears blurred vision briefly. "I promise," I whispered gently, voice trembling softly yet resolute, "never again. Your lives matter deeply, your tragedy remembered always." Laura's hand rested softly upon my shoulder compassionately, her presence quietly comforting. Rising slowly, eyes met compassionately, hearts connected profoundly by tragedy shared fully. "Come," Laura whispered gently, hand extended compassionately. "Our lives await us." Stepping forward slowly, sunlight warmed gently, illuminating clearly the path ahead. Paradise remained elusive, innocence forever lost tragically. Yet hope endured fiercely, humanity reclaimed profoundly, lessons painfully learned guiding forward gently. Together we moved quietly onward. Lives forever changed tragically, yet hearts fiercely determined never again to allow blind loyalty, obedience unquestioned, manipulation accepted silently. Paradise had crumbled tragically, innocence forever lost amidst flames. But humanity survived fiercely, reclaimed compassionately, lessons painfully earned remembered clearly. Stepping softly forward, sunlight gently illuminated clearly the path ahead. Painful yet hopeful, tragic yet courageous. Paradise might forever remain elusive, but survival, compassion, humanity reclaimed profoundly from tragedy's ashes. Together, we moved quietly onward, determined fiercely to honor lives tragically lost, lessons painfully earned, memories never forgotten clearly. Paradise had ended tragically, but humanity endured fiercely, hope rekindled gently from tragedy's painful ashes.